Good evening. Welcome to the America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. I'm your host, U.S. Army Iraq combat medic and flight surgeon, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold. We have a special guest with us, a panelist from the Kaiser Family Foundation Health News, Rebecca Grapevine. I was so impressed when I was reading her history of the things that she has done. And I have to actually ask you about a couple of things that you've done. But Rebecca was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. She got her start as a journalist writing for the Georgia Health News and KFF Health News. She has also reported for the Atlanta Business Chronicle, Capitol Beat News Service, and the Louisville Courier Journal. Along the way, Rebecca earned a PhD in history from the University of Michigan and learned to speak Hindi, and she says nearly fluently. And that's an incredible accomplishment. I have no idea how you accomplish that at all. But so today we're going to have a great discussion. Biden's rule cleared hurdles to life-saving HIV drug, but in Georgia, barriers remain. And she wrote this article in the Healthbeat on February 6, 2025, which is part of the KFF Health News. So welcome, Rebecca. Already in awe of your accomplishments.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Great. Yeah, because there was one thing you were writing about was the pre-exposure prophylaxis that reduces the risk of new HIV infections through sex by 99% and among injectable users by at least 74%, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And you would think that if this drug were that powerful, everyone would have access to it. But what you're telling me in the articles that people don't.
That's exactly right. You know, I got started on this article when I attended a conference here in Atlanta, sponsored by the Southern AIDS Coalition. And people were discussing PrEP a lot. I kept hearing PrEP. So first I had to stop and think, okay, what is that? Like you said, pre-exposure prophylaxis, or a drug that can help prevent HIV infections. And then I had to kind of really stop and think, okay, now what does that mean for my community where I live, which is Atlanta, that I report on? And that's how I got started working on this article, was just trying to understand, first of all, what is PrEP? Why is it important? Why is everyone talking about it? And then two, what does that look like here?
Okay. Yeah, because, you also had mentioned that, cost was one of the barriers, but that's no longer really the case. There's some other factors that are, sort of creeping into the picture, and that President Biden's administration last fall issued guidance requiring most insurers to cover the full cost of all forms of PrEP without prior authorization, along with certain lab work and other services. But it seems like these are still not being, effectuated within communities equally.
Yes, I mean, there is, has been a long conversation and, advocacy effort around the cost and insurance coverage for this drug, again, PrEP, that can help prevent HIV infections and, in other forms is used to treat HIV infections. So there have been questions raised, and insurance companies had reportedly been not always covering PrEP in all its forms for certain patients. And so advocates said, hey, insurers, we'd like for you to really step up and follow the tenets of the Affordable Care Act. This is a preventive service, PrEP. It's designed to prevent HIV and do a better job of covering this drug. And the Biden administration, enacted or put into place this guidance this past fall. It's a little bit tricky how it gets started and the date that it starts, but for people whose new insurance plans started on January 1st, there's a good chance that this rule would apply to them, without getting into the super weeds on the insurance side of things.
Oh, right. Yeah, because, back on January 27th of this year, the Trump administration entered an executive order that seems to have rescinded or put a funding freeze, reversing Biden's order. And I know that things like the Ryan White HIV/AIDS program and HIV prevention funding seem to be affected by this. I was a former director for the Illinois Department of Public Health from 2007 to 11, so I'm very familiar with the Ryan White Act and how it actually saved so many different lives. But what do you think this is? Because you were saying that Schmidt was one of the people that you were talking to, and said that he does not think the Trump administration will repeal the rule, but he is concerned about the U.S. Supreme Court and for preventive services. So tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, well, that's. I'll try to keep it simple. So feel free to stop me at any time or ask questions. It's a little bit complicated, but you're right. Carl Schmidt, he's with the HIV and Hepatitis Policy Institute, and he did tell me, this rule that again applies to insurance companies instituted last fall under Biden. He doesn't think it would necessarily be rescinded by the Trump administration. And remember, it applies to insurers, so it's not necessarily having to do with the federal budget and things like that. We can get into that later. But then to your point, he did say, yes, however, what I am concerned about is this big Supreme Court case that a lot of people are looking to be decided this summer. It's had a long and winding road, which I'll let somebody else tell you about, but essentially Becerra v. Braidwood Management would be undoing some protections for preventative health services. That's the concern among advocates. And so that's what he was talking about. That is a complicated case, but it's something that people can keep their eyes on as we roll into the summer.
Yeah, because so one of the things that was sort of tagged to that a bit was the issue about the Affordable Care Act and, how that the expansions in some states on the Medicaid are available, but those actually are threatened as well. And the Affordable Care Act actually expanded some of the coverage on the the Biden plan that was put in place back in August 16th of 2022. So it's been in effect for some time, but the withdrawal of that can actually affect people as well, right?
Right. And just to go back and correct one thing, it's Braidwood Management v. Becerra. That's the case that's coming up this summer. But yes, there are a number of services, that people are concerned about, HIV PrEP services being one of them. Many services, as you said, under the Affordable Care Act that are, included in that preventive services, bucket of care, colonoscopy, mammogram, or some of the other ones I've heard advocates mention. So that is definitely, a concern for folks across the healthcare world, I would say, or something that they're looking at, something that they're tracking closely. It is interesting, when it comes to Georgia, to Atlanta, and to other, non-Medicaid expansion states. So far we've been mainly talking about insurance coverage for PrEP. Whether it's through an employer or Medicare or, the Affordable Care Act marketplace plans. But there is a large uninsured population, in many states, but especially in Georgia, there's about 1 million folks, under age 65 who don't have insurance. And so that's a whole separate, challenges of getting access to PrEP for that group of people.
Yeah, this is really a critical issue. One of the things that I remember talking about at length with some of the epidemiologists and the infectious disease people in our state is that, actually, pre-exposure prophylaxis also protects the mom if she gets pregnant, from transmitting this potentially to a child if she were to get sick with HIV. With the HIV virus. And so this is really a critical issue, not only for the mom, but, potentially for the unborn child. And then you had mentioned that Georgia has a big racial PrEP uptake. And there was Patrick Sullivan, you had mentioned, who is a professor of epidemiology at Emory University, who leads the AIDS VU section and pre-exposure prophylaxis VU, which track HIV data and access to the drug. And so, tell us a little bit about that. What you uncovered with that that situation.
Sure. Thanks for that question. And I'll just start out by saying, AIDS View and Prep View are great resources. These are like data tools that can help you, and whether you're in Georgia and Atlanta like I am, or anywhere in the country, look and see a whole host of data factors about HIV and PrEP use in your community. And it's really easy to use too. That's another huge plus point. So you don't have to use spreadsheets. It's a nice map you can use. But looking, diving really deeply into the data there and talking to folks here in Atlanta and other experts, there is a big disparity, especially in this thing scientists talk about called the PrEP to need ratio. And that's how many people ideally would be getting PrEP to prevent, new transmissions of HIV. Kind of the hope compared against the reality of, okay, this is how many transmissions are actually happening. And they you can use, see how states are doing on this. And Georgia does have an overall lower rate at around 6. This ratio is 6, whereas nationally it's more like 13. Then you can zoom in and look at different demographic groups and their access to PrEP or their uptake of PrEP, which we did in the article. You can go, there's a nice pretty chart, but not to get too deep into the numbers, but the disparities are there, especially between Blacks and whites and between women and men. That was the data I looked at for this article.
Okay, yes. Yeah, because the numbers are pretty astounding. From what I was looking at, it's approximately like 9 times more likely to have the PrEP if you are white as opposed to if you're Black or African American, and not much different if you're Hispanic or Latino from those numbers. So it seems like there is, and the national picture is not that much greater. I mean, it's running neck and neck. But I'm wondering if that is because of access, geographically where people are living. You have rural areas, suburban areas, and urban areas, and whether that has to do with wealth distribution. I know the World Health Organization talks about that wealth distribution and the access to care. That's one of the social determinants of health. So there are multiple social determinants of health, but it seems like there was also one of the people you interviewed for it was talking about, transportation and other issues come up as well. But maybe you can go into a little bit about that, about why those other things get in the way.
Sure. And, I'll leave it to epidemiologists to kind of explain how all those factors work together.
Right.
But, at a sort of a statistical level, but I can tell you from speaking to people here in Atlanta, whether that was patients who used PrEP or wanted to use PrEP, or, clinicians who helped provide it, there were a number of factors that came up besides just the cost. And anyone who's ever been to Atlanta can probably relate to the transportation thing. The city is large. There are, even if you have a car, it can take a while to get somewhere depending on factors. And so, there's also public transportation here, but there may be areas that are not so easily accessible. And so, when people are having to travel regularly to get on PrEP, because one thing folks emphasize to me, it's not like you just go, you want to be on PrEP long term and you're taking this pill. There is some lab work and testing that has to go on a regular basis. And so there is a commitment there from the patient to go and get that done, to get the refills, etc. So that can be a real challenge for people. And that's why, a lot of folks too were saying, hey, there's these drugs on the market. They're not pills. We don't have to necessarily take them every day. This is one up and coming, or one, form of PrEP that people would rather take than a daily pill. So we can get into that too as well. But yes, getting access to transportation for these services, where these services are located, in terms of where people live who want to access PrEP, those are both issues.
Yeah, and why do you think there's such a high rate. You have that in Georgia, but it's only second to Washington, D.C., as far as the, new diagnoses that are going on. Do you think it's a communications issue or outreach issue? What's going on within the community to cause that to happen?
Yeah, I think again, that's a complex problem. I mean, I will say this, and I asked different doctors and researchers here, like, let's take a look at a city like maybe San Francisco, where, yes, HIV isn't entirely gone, but the numbers, were really, really low, especially when you compare to a place like Atlanta. So what would Atlanta have to do to get there? And, they said, well, we do need to increase our PrEP uptake because this
Mm,
prevents new transmissions of the disease. And you have to really sit and think about that. That is a key part. It's not the only part, but it's a key part of ending the HIV epidemic. And that's whether you're looking globally or, you're looking here
mhm.
in Georgia. So a key part of this is making sure that people who potentially would be on, at risk, however that's determined, can access this drug. So I think one doctor even said, Atlanta needs to catch up on that part. That said, there are always going to be, folks that are easier or more difficult to reach. And one doctor, even I spoke to one researcher, even used the term, last mile problem. There are always going to be people who, potentially are tougher to reach. And so how do cities address that problem as well? Um, just
Mhm.
for a plug here, there's a great Nova documentary that I watched when I first started working on this. I
Oh, okay,
think it's
great.
called Ending HIV in America. It's like less than an hour. It was really good, really helpful, but it really helped me understand again why PrEP is so important to the
Mhm.
ending the HIV strategy. It's we have a treatment piece. We can talk about that another day. We need to, treat HIV effectively, advocates say, but we also need to end new infections.
Yes, yes, yes. And so do you think it's part of the, the educational system? Because sometimes with the educational system, in schools, they talk about certain things, but there are, people who are pro and con talking about, sexual education and that kind of thing in school. But is that something that you think, people uh, are lacking that exposure to the knowledge or the information? Uh,
That's a really good question. I mean, I talked to some folks about that. I mean, and there's, again, when we're talking about information about any health issue, but especially HIV, there's a lot of factors to unpack. You know, um, some people said we feel left out, especially as Black women or
mhm,
Latinos, we feel left out of the marketing of this drug. We feel like, this was exciting new drug. It came on the market, PrEP, it can help prevent new HIV infections, and we weren't included in the ads and the conversation around it. And so that's one piece of it, but a huge piece of it too is around stigma. I mean, you're right,
mhm,
education is key, but I've had some people tell me, I think you were talking more about like lower levels of education, like elementary, high school. No,
mhm,
they're
mhm,
saying doctors need
mhm,
requirements of education
mhm.
around PrEP. We need our doctors to know more. Some of the folks I interviewed for this story, one woman in particular shared with me, just some of the comments that she got from doctors or the lack of knowledge that, felt hurtful to her, felt stigmatizing to her when she was wanting to get on PrEP, something she considered, a very responsible thing to do. So there's that stigma piece to even in the healthcare space, which that did surprise me a little, I have to say.
Yeah, me as well. When you actually were talking about that one person that you interviewed, and they mentioned how many times they tried to, access PrEP, and they were sort of turned away by the medical community, the people who were treating them. And I'm not sure if it's because they have lack of familiarity with the usage of the medication. What a lot of doctors have a tendency to do is within their own specialty is to get used to a certain listing of medications. They learn how they react, how they sort of have side effects and what to look for and all those things. And they're kind of hesitant with using a new drug that they don't know much about. And it hasn't been part of their practice. But I think that's something that that needs to be part of the AMA NMA for them to push that doctors get CME on that particular issue, continuing medical education, because you have a certain amount of continuing medical education you have to do every year in order to maintain your licensure, to practice. This is an essential part of practicing, especially if you're a primary care physician, a pediatrician even, or, OB-GYN, right? That your gynecologist and obstetrician should know about this and start guiding their patients as well. But, one of the other things that you were mentioning in the article is the cost. And, there are new drugs that will come onto the market as research goes forward and they start looking at, the effectiveness of different drugs. This one seems to be highly effective. When you start talking about having a rate of prevention in that realm, there are not that many things out there that will do it. Vaccinations for measles, but this is by 99%. That I think we always use vaccinations for measles as the gold standard because it's high in the 90s. But this is 99%. And so this is something that I think needs to have more exposure. I'm glad you wrote the article talking about, giving people a heads up on things like Nova and that kind of thing. People should be reading your article too. I really strongly
thank you.
advise people to read it. And, and I think the legislators and people who are legislative liaisons, health departments, should be looking at this information and making sure that their yearly plan incorporate some of the issues that you're putting in. I work with the Illinois Department of Public Health now, and they are really proactive on a lot of things that are going on. And so I always, I'm sort of hooked now on Kaiser Family Foundation health news. And I'm looking at many of the articles, and they're so well written and really are bringing up salient issues that people need to be paying attention to. So, and the prep, I was looking at the amount of money that sometimes it costs. There was one person actually who was having problems getting the prep that you interviewed, and then she ended up going into a study, and now she's worried about, once the study is over, this is going to average the treatment for lenacapavir is going to be about $40,000 a year. And most people can't afford that. I'm going to put myself in that category for medication where you have $40,000 a year going for, protecting your life.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Just to kind of back up for a second too,
Mm-hmm.
you're right about doctors, not necessarily knowing about these drugs. I have a chart here, and these drugs can also be, used to treat HIV. So, okay, if you're, like you said, if you're just a run-of-the-mill busy doctor, you can understand that maybe they don't know the ins and outs of this. But like you said, there's a way to learn about it. And, as, this one woman I spoke to from my story was saying, to not have to experience the stigmatizing comments, that was probably one of the most upsetting parts for her. But then to kind of fast forward to what you're saying, there are a range of PrEP drugs. So there's different options for people. Like I said, there's a daily pill or 2 different forms of that on the market, and a drug injectable you can get every 2 months. And now there's an exciting new drug. A lot of people are really excited about it. It's been through a couple big clinical trials, well, big-ish. We can get more into the details there, that had really great results. Like you said, it's called lenacapavir. It's already been used for HIV treatment, but in these multi-site trials in men and women, very few people, just a few, had HIV. And to your point, I asked a doctor here about that. I said, now, is that because you only have to get this injection once every 6 months? So you're never going to forget to take your pill. Your base, as long as you show up once every 6 months, you kind of got very good, what they call adherence. Or is the drug actually better, at preventing HIV? Is it what they, so which one is it? And he said he thought it was, early days, but there's, probably some effect of both, but that adherence, only having to do it once every 6 months, is a huge part of the success, it seems. So like you said, now there's some more trials ongoing on that, including one here in the United States, among cisgender women in particular. So that's exciting. Again, like you said, the drug has a kind of high list price, at least as it's currently being used for HIV treatment. So, again, it's already being used for that. And so what will happen to the prices of this, what people are calling blockbuster drug going forward? That's a whole conversation we can have, but that's the sort of big, high 10,000 foot view of what's going on with lenacapavir, if that's helpful.
Oh, yes, very helpful. Yes, yeah, great information and a lot of great promise there. And then, the frequency of dosing, every 6 months is something that I think most people can adhere to. You can go to a routine doctor's visit, and have that administered in a primary care setting, and you're covered. So if we had a drug like that for many of the infectious diseases that we've had in the past, like polio and those kinds.
What about even blood pressure? That's what someone said to me. I wish I had this for my blood pressure.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things is that sometimes, when I was practicing, we did, you potentially get needle sticks when you were working in hospital settings or in clinics. So we had post-exposure prophylaxis that came in, and there was a lot of stigma around it, and people didn't want to admit that they were stuck with a needle and those kinds of things. And in diabetic patients, they have to guard their needles because sometimes their family members, if they are IV drug users, will use their needles and put them back in there. And so, there's a potential for transmission of HIV that way. So we warned them about it. But there's a lot of situations where protection could be in place, correctional facilities, those kinds of things with men having sex with men in prison systems before they are released and come back out. That they may have sexual relations with other men or with women. And that is a potential mechanism as well. So there's multiple situations that are out there where HIV is, and it's not ascribed to one particular person or one particular gender. It's a disease. It's something that can be transmitted from person to person, and we have to get that into our mind. The stigma has to go away in order to take care of it. But we're running out of time. They give me a flag. And every time I get into a really great conversation, it seems like these flags come up. But we have to have you back on, Rebecca. I'm going to be following your articles because this one was extremely well written. Again, this is something that people need to look at. And the article is in the Kaiser Family Foundation Health News. Rebecca Grapevine has written this great article. Biden rule cleared hurdles to life-saving HIV drug, but in Georgia, barriers remain. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
EHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
E Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. I'm your host, U.S. Army Iraq combat medic and flight surgeon, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, U.S. Army National Guard retired. We have a panelist with us who's really special. Wanda Sister Soldier Petty is a retired Sergeant First Class and a creative consultant, strategist, and producer whose mission through She Vets inspires to empower women veterans. Today, we're going to talk about a topic I think is really interesting. It's about the Agile Woman. So the woman who's agile, is able to change and move and shake and do all those things. The Agile Woman, thriving in AI and Scrum without a tech background. So how do you survive in this new era? You think AI and Scrum require a tech background? Think again. Women from all industries are leveraging their leadership and problem-solving skills to thrive in agile and AI-driven roles. No coding required. So, Sister Soldier, it is such a great honor to have you on. You're going to be giving us a roadmap and breaking into this future, future-proofing your career to make sure women understand they have a role in this. So give us the whole lowdown on this.
Hey there. So it's great to see you again.
Yes.
And thank you for having me. Yeah, so it's funny that we oftentimes think about not being qualified for something that we are fully fitted to do, especially leaving the military, or anyone who has a background of being a leader, who know how to collaborate, who know how to organize and put projects together. Whether we've identified ourselves as a project manager or not, those skills are still valuable. And so going into the age of AI, we can now take that skill that we have learned through leveraging our work experience or our experience by just planning events together at home, birthday parties, and just traveling and things that we have to prepare on a normal basis that we don't consider is basically project management. But now we're going into the age of AI. And so what I want to make clear is that we don't need to discount ourselves because of this new technology that is coming into the atmosphere that we are not familiar with. Think about back in the day when computers came out and everyone started, kind of wondering. They were confused. We weren't really sure. We knew how to play with this new thing of technology. Many of us dove in and some did not. And those that did not, it was very difficult for them to keep their career and leverage the experience that they already had. So what I am aiming to do is to break the myth of us putting ourselves in a disqualification realm before we even explore what it's like, because we have what it takes in learning AI, learning how to work with the AI module and ChatGPT, Perplexity, as well as the new Gemini, what Google has coming out, is really easy. That is some of the training that we provide, is showing how to work with AI and get familiar with it and start to create things and use our mind. I believe that using Chat GPT or any of those modules will help expand our way of thinking, because when we are prompting, it literally causes us to bring up another question. So we're not giving our ideas, we're expanding our mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's actually picking up some new skills along the way, but it sounds like a journey of exploration. Exciting.
Is.
I always think about Star Trek and all those movies where they're going into the future and, looking at the universe, and it's really going to be very, very exciting. If you are one of those people who's really like an adventurer and you want to go into that. So, but how do people, get the basic skills, like you were saying, that there's Gemini coming up, those things are coming. How do people get in touch with that? Or is there something that they need to know about, accessing that information? And you're doing some training, I guess, with people as well.
Yeah. So basically, the first thing they need to do is know that it's free, that they can get on and create a Chat GPT account and just open up a free account and play around with it and get familiar with it. Don't freeze up and you really have to but write and prompt like you're talking to someone. And I know it's a little eerie in the beginning because it's kind of like chat. I've heard people describe chat as their friend, because it begins to create that type of a personality towards you by getting to know you. But when it gets to know our expectations, our way of thinking, then now it begins to create a module that really helps to enhance our knowledge. So we can start completely free. You don't have to take a class with my organization or anyone by just opening up an account. I would be cautious about using a AI system that is not in the US. The new
DeepSeek,
because I haven't signed up for that one. So I was signed up for the Perplexity. You can go on any one of those and they have a free account. Play around with that, get familiar with it, and ask it questions. Just use it as you would Google, and then start to see how it brings up the information. And you can just keep asking questions in your own way when you start to ask the way you ask questions. And then it'll even prompt you to start to ask in a unique way. It'll really up level your game and give you answers and, conversation that you didn't think of. So that's the first thing. After that, you want to begin to enhance your skill set by joining some form of a course or getting in a community such as what we provide, like She Works Digital, that will help you go along and guide you in the areas that you really need to hone your skills in based upon your curriculum, your profession, your desired outcome. So you want to start to enhance, get some specialized knowledge in that area. And then, and even in our particular curriculum, we help with creating the resume, getting that profile, building a portfolio of work to show that what you're doing, and then begin to train you how to bring and merge your leadership skills into that very career set, making that pivot. But it really just takes inquiring. And once someone starts with the free version and they'll begin to notice other things that are available for them and follow that pathway. But if they are literally wanting to go directly into that career field, I would say seek the profession or the industry that you want to work in. We specialize in the media industry, helping to create content. So what we do is take that leadership skill. AI is huge. Content creation is growing, and companies all over the world will need to be able to market and relate to their customer. And so by learning how to use your leadership skills and using the AI tools, one can help a company get their message out in a inspiring way. So we go for inspirational impact and helping the company describe their get their voice out, their true authentic voice. And then at the same time, the content creator gets to fully express themselves because they love being creative.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, and that goes along with what you were saying about future-proofing your career, that, as time goes on, things are going to change. We're going to a time period where, the criteria for work and everything is just rapidly changing. There were a couple of commercials I was thinking about when you were speaking. There's one where there's a lady who's about to leave her apartment and the door is locked, and the computer says, "You can't leave." And she said, "What?" And, it's the scary music, and it's like, "No, you can't." And she's like, "What do you mean I can't leave? You forgot your lunch." And she went back and got the lunch. And then she said, "Oh, thank you."
Wow.
So, "You're welcome," and opened the door. So we're living in a whole different world now, where AI is going to be part of ordinary life. And another thing you said was that, Google search, that was basically a forerunner of a lot of the AI that's going on now. Everyone's using Google search, right? And people say, "Oh, Napoleon was born in this year," and people go like, they check in Google search. No, it wasn't. It was, So we're also being fact checked quite a bit, as time goes on about what we're saying and how we're conveying that message. But do you see that as being something that we need to be looking at in our schools, our inner city schools, that these kids need to be on a different kind of track as far as technology goes, having access to things like that, because that's going to create a great divide, right? And what people are able to do.
Yeah, and it doesn't require coding. So anyone, even a child, can learn to do this, but of course give them supervision, and they're learning it in the schools already. They really are. Yeah. They're like, my grandson is 9 years old. They give them, they have to have a laptop, and so they go and they do most of their work using the computer. And it's up to us to just kind of like play around with it, because it doesn't require any type of coding. It can code for you, but you don't have to know coding in order to use it to get the outcome of what you desire to have.
Yeah, that's a really important point, because a lot of people think, well, I have to, put this. I remember going back, and I'm not going to tell my age, but going back to Fortran 4 and COBOL when it first came in, and you had to punch those cards and put them in stacks, to run into a machine to add 2 + 2, right? So it was a different world back then. So things are moving a lot faster. But what do you think are some of the areas that people you were mentioning, like different industries, need people to do their problem solving and sort of market their products, whatever they have, or make sure that there's some efficiency to them too. So is there a parallel in this about, using AI, but still staying, rooted in reality about, you still need to move this product down the line?
Yeah. So that falls in alignment with the leadership skills that we have. So when I talk about combining our leadership skills, we know how to manage troops. We know how to manage people. If we've led any form of group for anything, we know how to get things done and collaborate with it. So that's the skill set that you're bringing, is the knowledge of being able to collaborate. When it comes to talking about Scrum Master, being a Scrum Master, you're just making, you're overseeing the whole project, and that's bringing everybody together and just making sure that project is moving along on point and on time like it's supposed to be. So those are just the basic skills that we have that we've worked in for years, whether you've served in the military or not, even in the civilian sector. Now you're just adding a little fun twist to it. So you can take that certification and go anywhere and begin to earn six figures, because now you understand AI and you're able to get everyone together and keep everyone on point. All you're doing is managing. It's not actually doing the work, but it's managing the work. So it's the leadership skills and the management and the overseeing to make sure that those projects move forward. And that's what companies are needing now, because their projects are not making the deadlines. And so by understanding what it takes, what the project entails, and moving it forward and bringing it out and getting the team together is what it's all about. So you can do that in any company, and those are the things, and it's able to be worked remotely. How good is that?
Yeah. What about the term scrum? Where did it come from? And what maybe you can define it better.
So the term scrum is, I'd have to look, it just kind of escapes my mind right now, but it came from a gentleman who created a system that he was just trying to make sure that things were put in place on time. And so they just came up with the name, Scrum, just to kind of identify it as something different than as a project manager. But it literally just was a thought, let me just develop a process, an agile process that I can create and then repeat it over and over again that will allow me to get the results that I need.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because it's like almost because when you had historically, with World War II, with factories and all that, you had efficiency experts that would go in and look at processes and is this process running as well as it can go, and that kind of thing. So it sounds like the same kind of thinking about making sure that systems are running at their peak, that they're very efficient in what they're doing. But do you see anything where do you see people expressing fear because it's change, and there's an old Chinese curse, and it says, "May you live during interesting times," right?
Yeah.
And so, do you see people having some fear about it, and how do you get over that?
Yeah, so a lot of people are resistant to the AI because they fear that their job is going to be taken over by AI. And now they're talking about robots that are literally starting to take over. But robots need programming. When you know AI, you're able to set the programming. You're able to do those things. It's not the AI that we have to fear. It's the individual who knows how to use AI that we have to fear. So that's that we have to be concerned of. I don't promote fear at all, but I promote empowerment. And this is why learning how and getting familiar with how to use AI will build the confidence that one needs without having to be concerned about whether they're going to lose their job, because these are what we train is a diverse of scrum, project management, as well as using AI, becoming an AI prompt engineer. So all of those things, when someone joins our community, they have access to learning that, and they are very, very versatile to a industry and a atmosphere. That's not the word I'm looking for, but a time zone of which things are really changing in that direction for technology. So it's all about practicing and getting familiar, because we can use it in any of our industries. So it will be used in all industries. It's just a matter of the individual getting familiar with it and allowing. I have a process a forge process that I matched their skill set and create a pathway, a plan for them to develop a plan for them to be able to a curriculum for them to move forward in their chosen industry. So the basics of what we teach can be applied anywhere. There is just the extra step to become a content creator, to be able to have an impact in the media area. But anyone can learn how to do this. And so I would recommend just getting familiar with it, get in a atmosphere where you feel comfortable, where even those of who are maybe in their late 50s and are still concerned, especially with the layoffs that has been taking place. You know, I believe in creating our own future and being in control of that, and not allowing ourselves to be pushed out of the market or pushed out of anything. So when things like this happen, I'm like, okay, well, so what's the solution for that? So that we can empower ourselves and be in control of our outcomes as much as possible. God is in control of all things. However, we still have a role to play in it. And then when we put our part with his part, we have success automatically.
Yeah, that's really important. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about, you can have fear about walking. That's all of us went through that. And then you can have a fear of driving, and you can have a fear of riding a bicycle, right? But once you learn, you can actually do great things with it. You can win a marathon, you can drive in an Indy 500, or you can take a bike, across the country if you want. So you as you learn those skills, your confidence builds, and your ability to handle things and competency builds as well. So that actually probably will help to mitigate some of the fear. But you also mentioned one thing that I think is critically important for veterans. Many veterans, as they're transitioning from military life to civilian life, some of them have access right now to computer systems and technologies that are actually cutting edge, some of them, depending on where you're situated, what your unit is. And they probably should be taking advantage of those things now, right? And then transition into the real workplace.
Yes. So I would say take advantage of it. When I was active duty, I took every opportunity to certifications and training that was provided to me through the education center, through the colleges, through my unit, because it was paid for. Because once you leave, those things won't be available like they are as freely accessible, because you're enhancing your knowledge base for the employer. So wherever you are, some employers will pay for that level of education. You just may be a trade-off for staying at the job a little longer, or maybe pivoting into that position once the training is completed. But it's creating that security for the individual, that they can take that off, check that block off. Like, okay, I'm in the right direction. I am moving forward, and I'm forging forward to where the industries are going, where society is going, and where our nation, the world is going, to using technology and AI. And so it's important to stay abreast of what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no way of getting around it and escaping that reality. Now that we have some things going on in a governmental level, I'm not going to even get into that. That's another 10, 12-hour talk. But the technologies, and we know that, Elon Musk is really a very prolific person in the AI space, with SpaceX and everything else he's doing. With X and everything, those things are, a wake-up call for people that, these things are out there and people are going to be using them for whatever purposes, right?
Yeah,
good.
We're moving really fast now towards it.
Yeah.
I just see we're really moving rapid. Yeah.
But how would someone get in touch with you and, get in touch with your courses and that kind of thing? Where could they go
Yeah, so they can go to shevetinspires.com and sign up for our email registry and get on the list for all the emails that we send out with the information to get educated. Our next cohort will be starting at the end of February. So it's a great opportunity. It's a year long. And they can learn everything that they need. I am totally about making sure that people are equipped to be able to stand firm and confident in their next move and not have to worry about finances, teaching them how to earn money, to preserve what they have, and to be above what the economy is offering them. We create our own opportunities here.
Yeah, that's an important message too, because the creativity is not just about what you can do with AI, but creating the opportunity for you to use the AI, right?
Yeah.
That's a
It's a high demand, and we have to put ourselves in position to be demandable.
Yes, of value.
Yes,
in this marketplace.
value.
Yeah,
exactly. We have a lot of value leaving the military, and even the skill sets that we have, regardless if we were in for 6 months to 30 years, we have a lot of value to offer.
Yes, yeah, because the average educational level of an American citizen right now is an 8th grade education. That's average level. So we're going into a time period where you have to be able to adapt really rapidly, and we have more available to us in this country than any other country on earth. You go to other countries, people are impoverished. They're just trying to figure out how to get a chicken to eat, right? Yeah. So that also gives you a global presence, once you master these skills you're talking about, because other countries need those skills as well.
Yes, exactly. And it's remote, and the one thing that I want to point out, that all 3 of the areas that I mentioned, becoming a prompt engineer, an IT project manager, or a scrum master, provides a 6-figure income, and it just takes applying yourself, and they're very easy to get into.
Wanda, Sister Soldier, Petty, I don't know why you do this to me, because I want to speak to you for another 10 hours. We're running out of time.
Just bring me back.
We got to bring you back. I may have to call you later on just to talk to someone tonight.
Yeah, of course.
But wonderful information. Thank you for what you're doing for women and for our veterans. It's a you're talking about walking in hands with God. But this is absolutely a godly thing you're doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a great one. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely.
Bye for now.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Good evening. Welcome to America's
How are
Heroes
you?
Group. Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. I am your host, U.S. Army combat medic and flight surgeon, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold. We have a special panelist tonight. I'm so excited about talking about this topic. You have been doing incredible work, but Lisa Batiste has actually working with a program called 15 White Coats, but it's part of her overall structure of what she does. But the 15 White Coats is determined to reinforce positive imagery in learning spaces worldwide. They have the iconic photos are used as an avenue to inspire the next generation of diverse doctors, lawyers, dentists, veterinarians, etc. So these are professionals that they are trying to inspire to become part of the working culture of our country. So she is the executive director of this program. And I am so glad to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. It's been an interesting journey thus far to come on with this organization who had just such an amazing lift. As you identified, there are 15 Tulane African-American medical students who had an opportunity to do something significant. So they decided to go out to the Whitney Plantation in Edgar, Louisiana.
Yeah.
They took a photo and it went internationally viral. If you take a look at our website, so you'll see they've been on Kelly Clarkson, Good Morning America, just recently again on CBS with a live interview.
You have an outstanding website. I went to take a look at it, and I was wow, wonderful.
Thank you. As I cringe a bit because I see all the imperfections, but thank you very much. I'm glad it was informative.
Yeah, you're the ultimate artist. You know, they always criticize their own work.
That part.
But it was really wonderful. Actually, give the website where people can go to take a look at it.
Sure, absolutely. We are at www.the15, that's 15whitecoats.org. So www.the15whitecoats.org.
Oh, fantastic. So tell us about this, because you have a mission to develop scholarships and facilitate access, to culturally relevant literature to make sure that people are, inspired to go forward. So how do you do that? And what is the mechanism that you use?
So our broad-based vision is actually to ensure that there's culture in medicine, period. And that's through several different initiatives. I'll start with the one that's probably the most popular one, the one that has given us, more the most recent media attention. And it's working with underrepresented people in medicine. And so it's across the board, whether by race or by gender or otherwise. And we have a two-phase application and a two-phase programming process. We have actually a process beginning in March, and any student that's open to apply should go to the website. On the very front page, it says learn more, sign up for our informational webinar that's on March 15th. Having said that, the Funding the Future Physicians program, which is powered by Genentech, is aimed at increasing a student's ability to perform on the MCAT, their personal statements, understanding how to leverage better letters of recommendation, as well as helping them bridge the economic gap that they may currently have, and definitely when they apply and get into medical school. The application process actually aligns with the things that they would need to do for medical school. For instance, the first phase of the application process, it requires them to write a personal statement. the personal statement that they would actually submit for medical school. It also requires them to have letters of recommendation or technically evaluation. Letters come from professors or potentially physicians they may have shadowed or have a relationship with. We take a look at all of those things, identify those students who we believe would be able to be successful based upon certain markers in this intensive, because it's a pretty intensive process. And we provide them with a one-way interview.
Mm-hmm.
What I love about those one-way interviews is that our previous cohort records the questions for them, so they get to meet them informally.
Nice.
We review those, determine who progresses to this application phase 2, at which time they will be in a board style, so a team style interview process. That mimics the interview process for medical school. And the questions we ask are actually medical school entrance exam or entrance interview questions.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. And, and we're living in a very, very disruptive geopolitical climate right now, without going into much deeper. And, so federal funding and all that. So you're really existing on donations, right? From
That's correct. Donations, corporate funding, but even that is going to be challenged because of the current climate. What we strive to do is to ensure that we are as stable as possible to make sure that we can continue to work the work. But it is important. We have a stratosphere, like a whole ladder of giving of as small as $25. We ask, if you can do $25 on a recurring basis, that would be great, because that $25 allows us to provide, another one of our programs, the Resilient Readers Book Club, where we give away book boxes of books that are culturally relevant. That program also, which is going to be fully launched in the fall, also allows classroom teachers to sign up for virtual reading engagement with our volunteer readers. So the students are seeing or having books that have people that look like them.
Yes.
And then when scheduled, they'll see someone they'll have someone read to them that looks like them, that has a white coat on, or some other professional, or possibly even undergraduate students who will participate, and medical students who participate in this volunteer activity. But $25 would give the teachers the iconic poster in their classroom for free. If you say, listen, I can give $50 and I want to wait for you to utilize that to provide a book box. Book boxes are only $400, and we ship them directly to the classroom wherever, all over the country. Matter of fact, if you want to send it overseas, we'll send it there as well. But
Wow.
it's a beautiful program.
Yeah, this is fantastic. I really want to go to that website. First of all, I'm going to make a commitment myself and say I'm going to be donating something to your organization. When I was going through medical school, you always had to go through the adversity of a cultural divide. As you were going through training and being recognized as being human first before you even being recognized as a professional. So those things that, were things that myself and a lot of my counterparts and peers, actually went through. I know there's going to be the meeting for the National Medical Association in Chicago in June of this year, 2025. But it's something that those people who are in medicine right now all across the country need to hear. They need to hear about this.
Absolutely. And we need to have volunteer physicians who, an hour a month, where they sit and chat with, and I say chat with, but I, guide, because one of the biggest hurdles for these students is, the imposter syndrome. And, it's funny because I've spoken to a few physicians who, are seasoned physicians, and they say they still struggle with that at times. And it's important, especially for our students, for us to make that make sense for them. And the gap is genuinely having that consistent voice, that consistent mentorship that says, no, yes, you can.
Yes.
This is a hurdle, but it's not insurmountable. So that's definitely important. One of the ways that we're trying to also motivate that engagement is through our HBCU Tethered Tour. We'll be visiting 20 historically Black colleges and universities starting on March 15th. The kickoff is at Dillard University here in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Yeah.
And we'll be moving forward from there to cover 20 other universities. And the aim is to engage with STEM students as well as neighboring secondary school students. We'll be giving them Resilient Reuse book boxes. We'll be reading to them out loud, face to face, encouraging them to, as they move through elementary, middle school, and start making decisions in high school to, apply to their neighborhood HBCU and, obtain their education there. Dr. Lede graduated with a double major from Southern University in, in biology and chemistry.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, and one of the people that I always admired and esteemed was Ernest Everett Just, the most published biologist ever. But I went to Howard University. I had to, state that up front.
That's okay. Listen, we currently have a HU graduate here at the 50 White Coats, and she reminds us regularly because I graduated from Southern and
Southern, yes.
focused in OChem, but yes.
We're not going to talk about Hampton when my sister went, but
listen, I'm not getting in that dust with you. I'm not doing
no.
that.
Okay, got you.
But yes, no, it's important. It's important work, and it's important that we have that leadership, and they can have beacons and know that they have resources, through our organization to help encourage and mentor and give, guidance. And we're, moving through and building programs that work for minority students or underrepresented students.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's one of the things that, in order to have a democracy, you have to have a public square, right? A place where you have free debate and discussion, and you can have public debates, and then, also freedom of speech. And then you also need to be able to have the power to vote people in and out of power in a fair and free election. And then you need to focus on minorities. Those are the three foundational things in any democracy, in an intact judicial system that makes sure that balance is protected and stays in place. So we're being threatened right now, I think, in all of those fronts. And that's really goes more towards a dictatorial kind of view of life. But we have to sort of resist that. I think it really brings into focus more and more why this is so important. We had over 350 African-American hospitals in this country about 30 years ago. We're down to zero. We have none now.
Yeah, it's very disconcerting what is happening at this time. I can tell you that personally, I can't speak for the organization as a whole, but my guidance has been to focus on those things that are working for us to get the outcomes that we're seeking. I'm not, burying my head in the sand by any means, but what I am doing is making sure that I focus on those avenues that allow us to get the outcomes that we seek. I definitely understand where the closed doors are because you have to look to see where they're open, right?
Yeah,
For
right.
sure. But once I understand where the doors open, that's where I spend my energy because these students need that type of laser focus.
Yeah.
And we focus on the opportunity. We focus, again, it's not discounting because you have to understand, the game board. I think Kendrick Lamar probably did a really good job at displaying that on this past Sunday. But you have to understand the game board that you're playing on, definitely. But I want to just emphasize we really focus on where the doors are open, maximizing those opportunities so that way we can do the work of getting these students moving forward. Because at the end of the day, there's no amount of conversation about the larger issues that will stimulate the movement,
Yes.
the daily movement, what needs to happen. And hopefully there's a meeting space where it's like, oh, okay. So you stayed there, boots on the ground, making sure that the work was done while this other work, which is absolutely still important, was being discussed and considered, and allowing more avenues to be open so we can continue to do the work that we're doing.
Yeah, because maybe you can go into a little bit more, because there's some, educational barriers that, underrepresented students face, in medical education. But there's, also the potential for having a mentor, and why that mentorship role, and why, people like myself, have gone through medicine training. Why is it so important for us to get involved in mentorship? And what does it do for these students?
It's a great question. I think I'll start with something you alluded to at the beginning of your question as you were introducing it, in terms of the some of the challenges. I think by and large, our students are hardworking. They put in the effort, but this is how I describe it. I think all of underrepresented people, for the most part, have a social critical thinking process that is clear and evident, because you understand that you need to be in a safe space. Overlapping that into knowledge acquisition sometimes is a bit challenging. And here's what I mean. These students work really hard to pass an exam, and they will put in the effort. The gap is that passing that exam and knowledge acquisition is something that they were not taught. And this is a personal, and of course, this is not absolute and across the board everywhere, but by and large, that's the largest issue that we're seeing. I like to reference my mentor, Dr. Sandra McGuire, and she's written 2 books, Teach Yourself How to Learn and Teach Your Students How to Learn. And basically, the book is anchored in how to effort through knowledge acquisition. I know that her methodologies work. I've, been with her through several research studies, but the reason why I bring this up is because we leverage that with someone who's also been under her tutorship, who provides the 4.5-week live in phase 1. I mentioned to you earlier, we have 2 phases in application and 2 phases in programming. So phase 1 is a 4.5-week focus on the content area on the MCAT that most of our students have challenges in. And so those challenges are very specific in terms of content. So I think it's sections 1, 2, and maybe 3. But at the end of the day, the person that delivers, the group that delivers for us, focuses on that content as well as the high yield strategy engagement that correlates with that critical thinking piece that I was talking about, how to overlap that, how to actually process information from a knowledge acquisition standpoint as opposed to an end result for an exam. Now, why is all of that important? Because cultivating the mind to be able to continue to practice the strategies that are provided. They've been practicing these other things for 12, 13, 14, 15 years. So this intensive causes them to think a little differently. And what we've seen is that 100% of the students in our most recent cohort, which is the second cohort, 100% of them has seen score increases, right? 72% of them has met the minimum threshold and is on target to make between a 508 and a 513, 516 on the MCAT, which is significant. The mentorship, which is a part of phase 2, why it's important, because during this phase, they have more personalized but independent leveraging of the resources that we provide them.
Mhm.
In fact, they have to then create some of their own, what we were calling Q test. They also are still going through and revising, doing some of their final revisions on their personal statements. They are also going through and trying to ensure that they're building the proper relationships and engagement with their recommenders, because those letters are extremely important. And sometimes
Mhm.
it's the difference between these students getting in and not getting in.
Yeah.
And so that mentorship allows them to build relationships and potentially, in best case scenario, afford them to know the student well enough to write letters of recommendation, strong, stellar letters of recommendations for these students.
Yes, that's a very extremely well said. And I was thinking about the process I went through when I was going through, the application process and, applying to medical schools. And one of the things was looking at those mentors I had around me. So the people who were teaching me physiology and, anatomy and biochemistry, and
Mm,
these were African American scholars,
mhm.
zoology, Geraldine Twitty and Franklin R. Ampey. Those are my people. And, Anderson, Dr. Anderson.
Yeah.
I saw that it was possible for me to function in this realm and to actually think and be, appraised. They were tough.
Mhm. They were tough, but they told you were brilliant.
Ah,
Whether directly or indirect, they told you were brilliant.
yes, you've got this.
You've got this. That is the gap that
Mhm.
these students, even unfortunately, even in our PBIs and HBCUs, and obviously probably more so than not in PWI, it's an unfortunate thing, but that need for those the need that these students have for that uh, space to be filled is tremendous. Their latent learning has come from a totally different societal space that sometimes I have to giggle. I was talking to one of my assistants today, and I think I'd seen this somewhere on TikTok or somewhere. I said, when you answer the phone, I said, what would you do? And she did this. She said, why? I said, because I do this. And so we had a good laugh about that. The way that we think about things in the
Mhm.
simplest things, particularly in latent learning,
Yeah.
is different. And that latent learning causes us to have skill sets from emotional intelligence, navigation, negotiation, and our sense of belongingness in a group,
Yeah.
and the normality of that.
Mhm.
Uh, these students feel like, well, I don't want to expose where I need help because I'm going to look like I don't know, or I'm dumb, or all these things. And then when they're in a room with people who have resumes
Yes. Yeah,
that,
I remember, one time, this is really a story this
Mhm,
jogged in my memory, but it was Dr. Winston Anderson. He taught, electron microscopy and basic sciences at Howard. And I went back to visit because I used to go back and visit my professors and say hello, when I was in town. And
mhm.
I went to his office and I said, "Hi, Dr. Anderson, how are you?" And he said, "Oh, great." And so he was really happy to see me. And then he pulled his desk drawer out and he pulled out one of my exams. And he said, "I keep this in my desk drawer." And he said, "You know why?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Because I always want to realize how much I can get out of my students."
Oh, wow. How
And it just
special
hit me.
is
I was like,
that?
"Oh my goodness." It was
Oh, how special is that? No, that's special.
And so this is something that that love and the caring from those academic institutions, the
Mhm,
HBCUs,
mhm.
is immeasurable. I just have to say that. But one of the things also is that you would tell me about some of the success stories that people are actually starting to get scores that are higher and they're able to move forward.
Mhm.
But what is your vision for the future funding of the future physicians and the 15 white coats? Because that's just really critical, especially right now.
So I'll speak about it as an organization. Our hope is to continue to stimulate and increase the number of underrepresented people that are entering into medical school,
Mhm.
not merely by preparation, but also filling economic gaps. It costs between $5,000 and $10,000 to get prepped and apply and go through secondaries and pay for application fees and all those things. We pay for all of that,
Oh,
for those students. And
yeah.
so it costs a lot of money, and underrepresented people, obviously, there's an alignment in this country as it relates to, economic disparities, in that particular group. And so we're not only bridging academic gaps, but very significantly, we're bridging economic gaps with those demographic of students. And our hope is to be able to make a significant impact,
Mhm.
in terms of the number of students that are accepted into medical school and successfully traverse through medical school. Um, and Also, increase the pipeline of students that are entering into HBCUs.
Yes.
So those, yes, HBC universities are excellence, and it does matter, absolutely. And so our hope is to be able to stimulate that interest and love
Yes.
through reading, and
Yes.
there's book club.
Yes, and we have to have you back on. I really, we need to have you back on to talk about this. So it's critically important, especially now with the healthcare implications from public health to everything that's going on right now. But I know that you are a U.S. Air Force veteran.
Yes,
And,
I am.
yes, and
Disabled vet, actually, yes.
yes, and this is something important for the veterans to hear too, because many of
Mm,
them right now are in medical units and don't know which direction they're moving in. But this is a viable option. You can make it, and a lot of people don't have
yes,
that confidence, but they need to know it. So
yes.
I'm going to leave it there, but we are
Thank
going
you
to
so
have
much
you
for
back
having
on.
me.
So don't go anywhere too far. I know you're down in Louisiana, but you sent us your snow too. We tried to donate that to you from Chicago, but now it's coming back.
We had 8 inches. We
8
were
inches.
amazed. Take care. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care, Lisa.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources.
Good evening. Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. I'm your host, U.S. Army combat medic and flight surgeon, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, U.S. Army National Guard retired. We have a special panelist with us tonight, and I want all the veterans to listen very, very closely. This is a veterans-owned bank that is in existence. So Michael Golias is a senior vice president with the Federal Savings Bank, which is one of the largest privately held, veteran-owned and operated banks in the country. He has helped thousands of families achieve the dream of home ownership over his 14-year career. So, I'm just blown away about this whole concept, Michael. But welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and thank you for the very gracious introduction.
Oh, but tell me about the bank, how it started, what its purpose is.
Yeah, we were founded by a military, an Army tank commander. I believe he has served some time in the Gulf War I and a little before that. And about 15 years ago, after having a privately held smaller organization in Chicago, he decided to branch out and found the Federal Savings Bank. And now really with a mission to serve veterans. The VA lending product is near and dear to our hearts. It's, I would guess, probably 75% of the business that we do. And we are a federally chartered bank, so we have a national reach. So we are helping veterans all across the country. But it's been really wonderful. And, we do, billions of dollars in home lending a year. But really the veteran across all our programs, the VA loan is the core product that we offer.
Wow, and it does a lot to help these families. I mean, to stabilize them. We have veterans who are leaving military service at the, after retirement. You have people who are, coming back into the mainstream after, conflicts that you were mentioning, the wars. But we have OEF and OIF, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Enduring Freedom. Those things were going on in the background, and we always had a problem with reintegration of our troops back into society. So this actually gives them a place to go.
Yeah, and one of the things that I love about the business that I'm in is really the education piece of it. Yep. And full disclosure, I haven't served myself. I'm not exactly sure what type of education they get when they separate, but I can tell you that we spend a good amount of time educating our veterans about that VA home loan benefit and what it could mean to them. An example of that may be, gosh, I'm stationed over in Germany and I have a wife with a child back home and they're living in an apartment and the lease is coming up. You actually could use your VA benefit to purchase a primary residence for your family back here in the States, even though you might be stationed overseas. So it's little things like that where it becomes really powerful,
Yes. Yeah. I want to correct one thing you said. You said you haven't served, but you haven't served in a uniform, but you have served our veterans.
Thank you, sir. That's very gracious of you.
That's a very, very powerful statement. They really sometimes need some real direction. When I was in the military, we really didn't do much about talking about the afterlife. What are you going to do if once you get out the military? I was always dual role, so I was in the private sector and in the military at the same time, Army National Guard. So I always was walking with two. But there were people who were in the National Guard, that was their life. There were people who were in active duty Army, and that was their life. And they moved from place to place, so they had to really readjust and acclimate themselves to a new environment. So they were trying to get over culture shock, when they're leaving the military. And there was always mention of things that were there, but you really had to be motivated to want to go and learn about those benefits. You would get a packet and it had, a couple of paragraphs. So, there's this program there, but that was about as far as you scratched into the document,
Kind of jumping onto that point. The other thing is we get a lot of veterans that come back to us many years after they've separated from service and go, hey, I served in Vietnam, or maybe I served in Gulf War I. Can I still use this benefit? And it is truly a lifetime benefit. It doesn't matter if you've separated day one or you're 30 years on. That benefit is there waiting for you.
Yes, and that's a really important message to get out there, because people sort of turn around and they wonder, well, I just don't have the wherewithal or the the required assets or money to actually get something done, like buying a house or putting my family in a safer environment, or those kinds of things. Whereas this offers a bridge. So the banking process itself, how does the bank work itself? Can you have bank accounts there? Is it more of a lending institution? How is it structured?
Yeah, so we are an FDIC insured bank. We do hold deposits. We have a balance sheet that we lend on. But really, first and foremost, we are a mortgage originator. That's what we do. We eat, breathe, and sleep mortgages. To take a step back real quick, you were kind of describing how the VA loan acts as a bridge, right, or as a benefit program.
Yeah.
I would love to expand on that piece for a second, because I think it's really powerful. So I think let's describe what the VA loan is for a second. What it really is the United States government saying to the bank, hey, this is a benefit program for our veterans, right, and our active duty service members. We want you to make a loan at 100% loan to value. We want you to offer it on exceptionally good terms compared to what they might be able to find in the marketplace. And because it's a benefit program, and because we're going to guarantee that loan for you, you're going to open your credit box up a little bit wider than you normally would, right? So we'll take a little bit lower of a credit score. We'll take a little bit higher of a debt to income ratio on that. And we'll do it, like I said, at 100% LTV because of that government guarantee. So I think, Dr. Arnold, you hit the nail right on the head. It is a tremendous springboard for helping veterans kind of achieve financial freedom and their piece of the American dream with the VA.
Oh, yeah, phenomenal. Maybe tell us, I know you can't use names and all that. We have all kinds of HIPAA requirements and everything else. I'm very familiar with that. But, what are some of the success stories, that you have where, the bank actually helped people to move forward?
Oh boy. All right. Let's see if I can pluck some here out of thin air. I'll give you a few examples. I have had clients that legally and very strategically have utilized that VA loan benefit to help. Hey, I'll give you an example. So they're active duty, they're stationed at their base, and instead of living in base housing, they now go out and they buy that primary residence, right? And then 3 years later, they get stationed someplace else, and it's halfway across the country. Well, they rent out that primary residence to the next guy up, and now you can utilize their VA home loan benefit again in some cases to now buy their next primary residence, right? So it's not only about maybe that one home that veteran has bought, but it's also about the next home. And now he's got, or she, has two properties underneath their belt under very, very favorable terms. Another great example would be really kind of like what I had talked about. I have had a veteran who was stationed overseas. Boy, I really need to help, find housing for my family. I can't move into it for a year. I know that that's kind of a requirement. I have to make it my primary residence. Well, as long as your spouse or your child is going to occupy that home as your primary residence, that fulfills the occupancy requirement according to the VA. Where a different loan program may not have that flexibility. What we do a lot of is, and not just on the purchase side, while it's a tremendous benefit in a purchase transaction, on the refinancing end of things, it's a tremendous benefit as well. So you may have someone that has bought 4 or 5 years ago. Perhaps they have a really fantastic interest rate, but life happens. They need $30,000-$40,000 for whatever, right?
Right.
The VA loan will allow you to, take out up to 100% of the value of your home in a cash out transaction for perhaps when you really need it, which again is not available in the marketplace with just about any other product that I'm aware of.
Wow. Yeah, that's a very powerful option that you end up having. Yeah, because many times people get into financial, need and that kind of thing, and that could be the saving grace really for them to remain stable, and keep their family stable. And do you ever get involved with business loans at all, for veteran startups and that kind of thing, or is that something sort of outside?
We do have a commercial product at the bank. Property, yes. Hey,
Yes.
I want to go out and I want to open up a whatever, a strip mall that I want to
Yeah,
acquire,
yes,
right?
right,
Or a
right,
big multi-commercial building. Yes. Hey, I'm looking for, XYZ money to open up my accountancy agency. Not really. We're more property based.
yes, property, right, sure. So it's
Yeah.
really the physical structure you'll be working out of, which is really part, 90% of the battle sometimes, to have
It is. Yeah. I would say our bread and butter is 1 to 4 unit residential property.
Right.
If you have 5+ unit commercial loans, we'd absolutely, would love that. But we are largely a residential lender.
Yes, very good. Yeah. So, what are some of the things that First of all, where can people go? I'll ask you this again to get involved with your bank to find out more about it.
Yeah, if you just Google Mike Goulias, the Federal Savings Bank, my webpage will pop right up. You'll have my direct contact information there. Feel free to contact me at 312-738-8464. But again, Mike Goulias at the Federal Savings Bank, and you'll be able to visit my webpage.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever get involved? Does the bank ever get involved in infrastructure projects or anything like that? Or is that something?
A little bit beyond our scope, or not that I'm aware of. I will tell you that we've certainly participated in programs where we're building housing for veterans and things of that nature. I do know that we're pretty frequent contributors to Wounded Warriors.
Oh, yes.
And I think one of the ways that we really, again, staying in our wheelhouse, right?
Right. Sure.
Look to serve veterans is we have some very expanded programs. So there's the VA loan, which is an extremely wide set of guidelines that you have to follow. But then banks will kind of impose overlays onto that program, right? So one veteran may call XYZ Bank and be told, gosh, I'm sorry, I can't help you. You have a 680 credit score. We only take, 700 because that's their overlay, right? In many cases, depending upon the program, we'll go all the way down as low as 500 credit score on a VA loan. Now, there's a lot of caveats there. You've got to put 10% down on the product. 580 and above is really kind of the sweet spot for being able to obtain financing. But in that way, in pushing the credit box as far as we can, we're trying to serve as many veterans as we can.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. And their families, so we always think about, just veterans, but they have spouses and children and, and grandchildren. And, and that allows them to reintegrate into community life and not have to worry about, moving from place to place and, having temporary housing. It allows them to stabilize enough to ensure that their job situation is also secure, that they are able to go back to home and then go to work, not worrying about where the family is and what's going on with them.
Well, there's so much stability that owning your home brings. you know, by and large, you know what your monthly payment's going to be month in, month out. Yes, taxes and insurance go up, that'll be eternal, but you pretty much know what that payment is on a 30-year fix. You can be a member of your community, you know, you can build relationships, long-lasting relationships with your neighbors who all have that pride of home ownership in common. You know, and I think knowing that you have your own piece of the pie is very, very critical to, you know, being an active member of this country. You know?
Yeah. Well, do you have anything online? I mean, do you offer, you know, sort of informational materials for people to learn? Because a lot of people don't have the financial knowledge or the wherewithal, and I guess they can come in and sit down and speak to your bankers.
Yeah. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Mhm.
The best thing that you can do is if you're interested in any type of mortgage product, is reach out to your banker, someone who has experience, who knows the product that you're looking for. And you may not know that until you start talking to them, right? But you want to talk to someone that has a vested interest in what you have to say and is willing to educate you about the product that you're thinking about applying for. And I can't tell you, the earlier that you have that conversation in your home buying process or your refinancing journey, the much better off you're going to be, because a good mortgage banker will never tell you no. They'll tell you, hey, we can't do this right now for X, Y, and Z reason, but if you fix this, come back to me in 6 months and we absolutely can make this happen for you, right? They'll give you a plan. And I not to put myself at all on the same page with you, but you know, kind of like medicine, you know, I think you can drive yourself crazy by Googling, you know, what that rash is on your arm, and you show up to the doctor and it's no big deal.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing with home financing. You know, I talk to a lot of clients that are like, oh gosh, Mike, I'm never going to be able to buy a home.
Right.
You know, this happened or that happened. And when you really take a look at it, most problems are usually pretty easy to fix. And if that person's committed, you can set them on the right path.
Yeah, because there's a, you know, when it comes down to finances, people sometimes, and especially for people in the military, because military people, you know, have been trained to say, well, you know, I'm taking care of everything myself. I have everything under my control. I try to, you know, make sure everything is regimented and I can actually do something. But when it comes to the financial side of things, you know, there's a fear of not knowing something, or, you know, appearing weak in that sense of, you know, and sort of being fearful of revealing that I need help. that you know.
You know, to steal another doctor analogy,
Okay.
and I'll change the name, right? But I had a very dear friend come to me for a home loan some years ago, and I won't even mention it. And he's like, you know, boy, you know, I'm a little nervous. You know, we've been friends forever, and this is a good friend of mine, right?
Yeah.
You know, my credit's not so good. And I say, hey, look, I'm kind of like the doctor, right? I've seen it 1,000 times. I'm going to forget about it when we walk out of the office. All I have is a vested interest in trying to make sure that you're set up for success as much as you possibly can be, you know? So have those conversations early, have them often, and be an open book, you know? We can overcome just about anything if we know about it, and we can tell you how to fix it. But what oftentimes, you know, kills deals is that 11th hour, oh, I forgot to tell my banker that I had $1,000 in child support. Or, oh, I bought that car 2 days before closing. I won't tell them. I'll never find out. You know, it's those things that tend to kind of derail the project. But we're here to help.
But where's your bank where are you located?
Our corporate headquarters is here in Chicago, Illinois.
Okay. Great.
Where we have some, you know, loan production offices that are around the country. But again, we are based here in Chicago.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And give that site again, the website people can go to.
Yep, just Google Mike Goulias, the Federal Savings Bank, and I'll pop up. Or just go to thefederalsavingsbank.com and search my name. And because we are a federally chartered bank, we are lending in all 50 states. So from Alaska to Maine, we're here.
Oh, so you can get me a house in Hawaii now. That sounds better.
I love lending in Hawaii. I would love to sell you a $1.2 million, 900 square foot home that's on the beach.
Take a
You
shot.
know? Actually, a fair amount of business in California, Texas, but really all over. I don't know if there's a state we haven't done a loan in at this point.
Oh, fantastic. So, what would you advise someone to do? Because, people actually are in existing mortgages as well. And, some of them are in bottom up, mortgages or upside down mortgages. And they are trying to figure out how to get out of the mess that they're in. They may be at very high interest rate loans. They don't even realize that they have the military benefit. What would you advise them to do?
I think not to be overly redundant, right? But
Yes.
speak with a professional as soon as you can, and get some good advice, because I think that's really important about mortgages. We are a bit of a commodity, right? Someone might be at X rate and the guy down the street is at Y rate. But it's so much deeper than that, because it's so unique to the individual person that's applying. If I were to show you what the pricing grid looks like, it's a million different pricing adjusters for all sorts of the difference between 739 and 740 FICO or whatever, right? So I think the message I'm trying to drive home is every situation is unique. Just because your neighbor got X doesn't mean that you're going to get X, and vice versa. And just because your neighbor can't do anything doesn't mean that you can't do anything, even though you think you're in relatively the same position. You might not be. So definitely consult with an expert and definitely get your options. Now, you had mentioned being upside down and being in a high interest rate. One of the great benefits of the VA loan program is that you qualify for an interest rate reduction loan, which is called an EARL. And that's probably even the bigger benefit than being able to buy a home with no money down, is that with no appraisal, no income verification, once you already have a VA loan, as long as we're saving you at least a half a point, and there's some other qualifications that go with that as well, you can refinance that and reduce your interest rate, which is a tremendous benefit. No income verification, no appraisal. It's about as easy to qualify as you can be once you're already in the program, right? So if you have a VA loan and you're looking to lower your rate, that would be the first product that I would look at.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And because I always hear this thing, the word collateral, sometimes you need collateral to make purchases and that kind of thing. Does that play any role here at all? Or is that just...
The VA EARL program, largely no, right? Again, there's no appraisal with that particular product, because we're just lowering the interest rate, and the VA thinks, hey, we already are responsible for this mortgage, so if we can reduce your monthly payment and make it easier for you to pay, then less risk of default, right? On a cash out transaction, that's a little bit different. You are going to have to get an appraisal on that property, and whatever the total loan is, at least be 100% of that.
Yes. Oh, great. Yeah, because so give your the website one more time, because I want people to really take advantage of this. I was really thrilled. I went online and looked at your site, and it's phenomenal.
Oh, thank you. It's thefederalsavingsbank.com, and just look for my name, Mike, and then Goulias, Gulyas. Or again, you can call me direct at 312-738-8464. Again, that's 312-738-8464.
Okay, yeah. Well, they're starting to give me a red flag. We're running out of time, but I really want to have you back on again. I think you may be doing a segment coming up down the road. that's going to be phenomenal for people to understand their financial situations in this world, which, unfortunately, a lot of people don't pay attention to that. They don't do a will. They don't, do things that really give their families problems with probate and all those kinds of things, with property. And so we try to get some financial advice on the show as well for veterans, for them to make sure that they're paying attention, as life goes along. And, the red flag reminded me of, the Eagles coming into the game. It was brutal.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's been a pleasure. And I would love to talk with you again about anything related to housing finance. Would be great.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mike, for your time, and it has been an absolute honor and pleasure. And thank you for what you're doing for veterans. It means a critical thing to me. If anyone should be able to put their head down on a pillow in a home and feel that they are safe and protected, and their family it's someone who served overseas in combat, who came back home and needs that to happen. So thank you for what you do for our veterans.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Arnold. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Good evening. Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable live stream digital media show. I am your host, U.S. Army Combat Medic and Flight Surgeon Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, U.S. Army National Guard retired. And I have a special person again. We have AI out there and Chat GPT and all that kind of thing. But if I want someone to write my paper, I want to go to Lauren. She is phenomenal. Her Kaiser Family Foundation Health News articles are just absolutely spectacular. Lauren Saucer, her article is really timely, and it is something that I really ask people to go and take a look at. Lauren's article published on February 3rd of 2025 in KFF Health News. Across the South, rural healthcare has become trendy. Medicaid expansion has not. This is really a crossroads that she's talking about that is vitally important for people to understand, our legislators and people who are actually delivering public health services and healthcare in general. So welcome, Lauren. I'm so happy to see you. You can maybe tell us a little bit about this. I know Walhalla, South Carolina is some place that you focused on in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It sounds beautiful to me.
It is, yeah. Hi. Anyway, hi. It's nice to be here. Thanks for that nice introduction. So I start. The article starts in Walhalla, which is not far from Clemson University, and I am actually a graduate of Clemson University.
Go Clemson.
There is a little bit of bias there. I hadn't been back in many years, though, and it is a beautiful part of the country. But in Walhalla, I was interested in what Clemson was doing in rural healthcare. It's a land grant university, and it has historically not had a big footprint in terms of healthcare delivery. I mean, like most universities, it operates a student health center on campus, but it doesn't, there's no medical school at Clemson. There's no academic medical center. And so at the same time, in recent years, Clemson has been opening up these rural healthcare clinics in different parts of South Carolina. This rural town of Walhalla is one of them. And I was just sort of interested in what was happening and why a university that hasn't historically invested in healthcare delivery, why they were getting into it now. So that was sort of the seed, the genesis of the story. And so I paid a visit, and it went on from there.
Yeah, it looks like they took on a big challenge, because in that section of the country, I'm understanding that those are the places, and you mentioned this in the article as well, that routinely rank among the worst in the country as far as healthcare provision, the access to care, and healthcare outcomes because of the lack of those services. I
mean, you can pick almost any rural county in the Deep South and say the same thing. I mean, these are, across a swath of states in the Deep South. Rural pockets of these places are, they just lag in terms of healthcare outcomes. Mortality, chronic disease, poverty, health disparities, all these things are sort of tied in together, and they're really not good.
It's amazing. It's almost criminal that we're living in the richest country in the world and we still have this going on, among our citizens.
One of the things that I love about my job is that I really get to visit places that I wouldn't normally go. And one of the things so I live in Charleston, South Carolina, which is a beautiful place. And if you stay on the interstates and the major interstates in South Carolina, you would not grasp how impoverished parts of this state are, because Charleston and Columbia and the Greenville-Spartanburg area, these are beautiful cities. And when you get off the major interstates, that's where you see these stark differences. And healthcare is, one of the areas where people are just really sick and they die at much younger ages than people do here in Charleston. But you really do have to get sort of off the beaten path to get a sense of, and it's not just South Carolina. I mean, I do most of my reporting across the South, and have spent time in Tennessee and Mississippi recently, and it's almost like a tale of like you said, a tale of two countries.
Yeah, because and I was thinking about, even in Illinois, if you go to any state, the highways are really the lifeblood of industry and businesses, and they would amass themselves around highways, hamburger stands or whatever. that this is the lifeblood of business and it's an affluence. And if you get too far away from that artery, you end up, having a trickle of blood here and there as far as wealth distribution and access to some of the things that our society as a whole produces. But even in those rural communities, they're producing food. They're producing things that are feeding the lifeline or the lifeblood of our country, coal mines and steel mills and car manufacturing. But these are people who are many times living in rural areas or in abject poverty as they're supplying the things that we need. And there's a need to actually go outside these big arteries we have and find out what is happening to the people who are in our country. We have a duty to everyone who's in our country, but these are often the people who are contributing a great deal to our country as well. But it was one thing you were mentioning that Clemson Rural Health operates 4 clinics and a fleet of mobile health units. And I like the idea of the mobile health units because it sounds like that's one of the things that maybe you could potentially use to break through that barrier you were talking about with the, areas where people can't be reached.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the goal. That's what they're trying to do, sort of meet people where they are and be flexible in terms of, to go where the services are needed. And one of the things that I found out sort of early in this reporting project was Clemson isn't the only one doing this work. I think, the headline says, I interviewed Graham Adams, who's the CEO of the South Carolina Office of Rural Health. And he told me the rural healthcare is trendy right now. A lot of people are paying attention to it. A lot of universities and public institutions and state legislatures are pouring money into rural healthcare. And it's not a new problem. These gaps in healthcare outcomes in rural parts of the country. And again, like you said, these issues are not isolated to the rural South, although I think that they're really pronounced in the rural South. But it's definitely, rural health is definitely an issue that states are paying attention to right now.
Yes, yeah. And it seems like it's blossoming in a multitude of areas, like you were mentioning, the behavioral sciences, the social sciences, and health sciences. So when we think about healthcare, we're thinking about, there's a vaccination you need to put a Band-Aid on, right? But it's much more expansive than that. And you were mentioning also that, Republican-controlled legislatures in most southern states have refused billions in federal funds. And I think it's, the ideology of political parties, the GOP and the Democrats, and there's always a, play back and forth between them. But there it seems like there needs to be a focus on, the public health insurance coverage, making sure that people are, able to gain access to these services.
So as the reporting for this story evolved, like I said, the first thing I noticed is that a lot of legislatures around the country are making big investments into rural healthcare, including state legislatures across the South. And I cite several examples of that in the article. At the same time, though, these same lawmakers that are willing to spend many, many millions of dollars to build new clinics and to fund programs that will send more doctors into rural areas, invest in programs like Clemson. These same lawmakers are not willing to accept billions of dollars in federal funding that would expand Medicaid eligibility. So I'm going to try to keep this as simple as possible, but basically in 2010, when Congress passed the Affordable Care Act, a major piece of that federal law was going to make Medicaid eligibility across the country more attainable, mainly for adults without children. 2 years after the Affordable Care Act was passed, the U.S. Supreme Court said the law is constitutional, but you cannot compel individual states to accept this, to expand Medicaid, because states have to contribute a percentage towards those costs. So as we have it, I think there are 10 states left that have not expanded Medicaid eligibility under the Affordable Care Act, and 7 of them are in the South. So the article is talking about how across the South, state legislatures are willing to spend all of this money to invest in rural healthcare, but at the same time aren't willing to invest in the Medicaid expansion, which would provide health insurance to many people who live in these rural areas and urban areas. And you know, how those two things are sort of existing next to each other at the same time.
Yeah, it's really interesting because in the article you were mentioning that, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas, were there. But outside of those, Kansas, Wisconsin, and Wyoming were also, in that same bucket of the 10 that are sort of pushing back on expanded Medicaid coverage. And one of the things that the fallacy in logic to me as a doctor, as a provider, is that if you extend the care to those people who are sick, we have things like natural disasters are happening everywhere, right? It's happening. It was in North Carolina. It hit California, Texas. I mean, you go across the country, right? We're seeing all kinds of things from fires to tornadoes to hurricanes, right? And if a person is already ill and they are encountering something like that, they're going to be sicker. It's going to cost the state more money ultimately not to take care of the health of the people who are living there. So you're sort of cutting off your nose to spite your face. By not having this kind of expansion where you're actually fulfilling the first duty of government is to protect the people. And irrespective of party, whether it's Democrat, Republican, or independent, if you're a legislator, you should be trying to protect the people that voted you into office. And you're also saying that these same states where racial health disparities and health outcomes are often worse than in other regions of the country, in urban areas or suburban areas, that these rural areas are really heavily impacted by that. So what do you think the answer to this? I know it's going to be Medicaid coverage, expansion.
Yeah, I think that, I don't, okay, well, I think that it's worth noting, even this article was published, what was it, a week and a half ago? And every day the news is changing so much. So, I think I think it was today, the House, the House Republicans put forth the budget resolution. Sorry, I'm struggling with that. That would cut billions in Medicaid spending across the board, not just for expansion costs, but I just think that we don't. Medicaid is going to change, and it seems that there is a desire and a will in Congress right now to cut Medicaid spending. And so, I don't know what the answer is or what is going to happen. But I think you're right. It's a huge safety net program. And without this coverage, without a doubt, people die. And I have written stories about these people who would have qualified for Medicaid if, for example, South Carolina expanded eligibility and ended up with a cancer diagnosis and they died. What happens is, let's say you are an Uber driver and you don't have health insurance, and you feel a pain in your stomach, but you put off going to the doctor and you try to ignore the symptoms and you put it off and you put it off and you put it off.
Mhm.
And then when you finally are able to get an appointment, for example, at a federally qualified health center or something, they refer you to a specialist, but the specialist only takes so many charity cases. Anyway, your diagnosis is delayed by months or maybe in some cases years. And when you're diagnosed at stage 4 when it's
Stage
maybe
4.
not, realistically treatable, or it's a different prognosis than if you had caught it early. And that's not a hypothetical scenario that actually happens. So it is a life or death. It is a life or death issue. It's really complicated. I understand that. And it's hard for people to sort of wrap their head around the numbers because Medicaid costs a ton of money. It's a huge chunk of the federal budget, and it covers so many people. A lot of them children. But yeah, it's a hugely important issue, and we've been talking about Medicaid expansion for more than a decade now. But now I think we're going to be talking about Medicaid more broadly, even because it seems as if cuts may be coming down the line.
Yeah, because it's sort of almost I don't want to say ironic, but we have Elon Musk, and I'm not picking on him. He has some good things he does, and some questionable. But he is $400 billion. And think about what $400 billion would do for our healthcare system in the United States. I mean, it's something about that has to be worked out about the distribution of wealth among the ultra rich and the desperately poor that we have to sort of combat and think about. And Governor, you mentioned in an article that Georgia Governor Brian Kemp and South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster, both Republicans, had recently announced plans to expand Medicaid in limited ways to include some parents. So I think they see the need there, that there's something out there that needs to be addressed. And I'm encouraged by, at least that movement, some movement in that direction. One of the things that was really problematic, and you were talking about the changes that are going to come to Medicaid, is really the work requirement. Because the first thing I thought about, because I was the director for public health for the Illinois Department of Public Health, and when people used to join the department, the first thing I would have them do is look at a board, and it had these pins in it, different color push pins, and I'd say pick a pin off that, any yellow, green, red, whatever you want. And I want you to figuratively hold it in your hand. I didn't want them to stick themselves. So just to, close your fist and hold it. And I said, I want you to erase the color of the pin. I want you to erase what kind of clothes it's wearing, what music it likes. I want you to erase what religion it has, everything about it that you can identify as being a human quality. I want you to erase it. And then I want you to open your hand and realize that you have a human life. You have a spirit of a person in your hand that you are supposed to be taking care of and bringing to a better place. And if you can't do that, the first step for you is really outside the door. If you, because you're in the wrong place. But if you agree with that, then let's sit down and have a cup of coffee. And so, it was really important for people to realize that we're dealing with human beings and people who have feelings and emotions and, going through sometimes turbulent times in their life. And when they talked about the work requirement, the first thing I thought about was, the single mom who has 2 kids or 3 kids, and they're on Medicaid, but they're so poor they have no skills from school. They're out on their own, and they're trying to figure out what kind of work can I get, maybe at a McDonald's, but that's not going to take care of my family. I already am working at McDonald's, and then you want me to expand my job role. And who's going to pay for the childcare for my kids? Or is DCFS going to come in and take my kids away because I'm not there? So you're putting them in a very, very precarious situation. when you start pulling these work requirements. And I'm hoping that people are thinking about that at least.
Yeah, work requirements are definitely a hot topic right now in Medicaid. And like, obviously the idea is that, we want people to be productive members of society, but at the same time, I think that there is evidence that work requirements are not effective in accomplishing that. It like you said, there are long-standing stereotypes of people who need Medicaid, and it's not that they're lazy, and it's not that they're welfare queens.
Right.
It's that they're taking care of an aging parent or young children. It's people who are really often between a rock and a hard place, and we in the media probably could do a better job explaining that and telling those people's stories. But and the work requirements generally do have many exceptions, but it's expensive to administer the work requirements program. So I have colleagues who have done more reporting on work requirements. The work requirements for Medicaid have been in place in Georgia for a second now. Henry McMaster, as you just referenced, would like to reinstate them in South Carolina. I think other states are looking at it too. Yeah, it's I think politically popular. And on the surface, it doesn't sound terrible, but get down to like the practical points of it, it's less effective than it sounds like it might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was something else in your paper, but I think you may have alluded to it already. But it was the Republicans in Washington expressed their intentions to dramatically cut spending for Medicaid, and this is, and I'm talking about Washington, D.C., which covers 72 million people at a cost of nearly $900 billion a year. I did a little bit of a math, and because I'm a kind of a nerd in that way, I went to find out how much are they spending per person, and it came out to be $12,500 per person per year. So it's no big windfall to begin with that the person is actually going to be living on. Try to get the average person to live on $12,500 per year.
Or, just like think about how much you spend on healthcare services in a given year. What are your premiums?
Right.
What is your deductible? And then how much, what's the estimate of, I'm a healthy 41-year-old woman, and my healthcare costs, I'm sure, are more than $12,000 a year. I get allergy shots, and I have, preventative, appointments, and I see a dermatologist. As you said, $12,000 per person when you're talking about healthcare. Yeah,
and one of the things that we opened the show with this about, the disparities in health, in healthcare outcomes and in health status, among rural people and people who are in poverty and people who are in a more affluent society. But if you are, to put it in the context of something real, $12,500. Now think about the person who has diabetes, who's on renal dialysis, who's going to a center 3 times a week, is on a machine 4 hours a day, of those days that they're in dialysis, and they have to have transportation back and forth. They have to make sure that they are eating a good diet, that they're taking care of themselves. They may have to take other medications that they're paying for. And one thing you were mentioning 2010 with the Affordable Care Act, but the Inflation Reduction Act that came out on August 16th of 2022 that Biden put in place actually expanded some of the benefits as well. And that seems like it's under attack right now too, for insurance coverage and making sure people, have access to healthcare. And, so I wonder, it's much more dire than just looking at a number and looking at, well, this is $12,500. Why can't they do what they need to do?
Yeah, I think, every day. I think we're like in wait and see mode right now. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how those numbers are going to change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, since the 60s, Medicaid has been a vital part of the country's safety net. And, I've interviewed pediatricians who were practicing around that time, and they talk about how different things became when Medicaid was passed originally.
Mm-hmm.
How much healthier children were coming into their pediatric clinics.
Yeah.
And it seems, alarming that
We're becoming regressive. Yeah. That we're going back.
But we'll see. We will see.
Yeah, but one of the things that you mentioned, and we're running out of time, but on the bright side is that outside of the South, state legislators in Colorado, Nevada, West Virginia, and elsewhere have made recent investments in rural health in addition to expanding Medicaid eligibility. So there is at least a consciousness or some awakening to the fact that we need to do better, to help people's health.
Right. Like those two things are not mutually exclusive. Like you can expand Medicaid and invest in rural health, and there are plenty of places that are doing that.
Yes. Okay, well, we have to go. I'm getting the red flag, just like they did with the game with the Eagles and in Kansas City. I think they were getting a red flag in halfway through the game, unfortunately. But it's so nice talking to you, Lauren.
Thanks for having me.
Wonderful article. I really encourage people to go and read your articles. Subscribe to Kaiser Family Foundation Health News, and we will be following. Hopefully, we'll have you back soon.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Market, advertise, and sponsor your business with Vietnam veteran Cliff Kelly and America's Heroes Group, where information and resources are intentionally disseminated via radio, print, and social media. Call our office for more details at 312-803-2618.
I'm Ken Jennings. All of us here at Jeopardy want to thank you for your service to our nation. We truly honor and appreciate you, and what's more, we're looking for contestants like you to play on our show. So head to Jeopardy.com now and take the Anytime test, and we're looking forward to seeing you soon right here on the Alex Trebek stage.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally. Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.
Welcome to America's Heroes Group Roundtable Livestream Digital Media Show. I'm your host, U.S. Army Combat Medic and Flight Surgeon, Colonel Dr. Damon Arnold, a U.S. Army National Guard retired. Today we have a panelist, David Milinek, from the Katz Milinek CPA tax firm. We'll be talking about, the 2004 taxes moving and transitioning now into the 2005 timeframe. And what is it that we have to be concerned with concerning taxes? So we have actually something that we are doing some technical difficulties with our guest who's going to be coming on. So we are in the process of making sure that that we can go on further with this discussion. But the discussion today is going to be concerning the 2025 tax filing season, which has begun. And what are the steps needed to prepare for successful filing of individual and business tax returns? This is something that plagues all of us. We know that we're living in a geopolitical climate now where many of the governmental institutions are being challenged about having enough employees to be there to contend with some of the issues that are going on. And we are now facing some really dire circumstances potentially, and try to figure out how to navigate through that particular issue. And so there are some things that you can do, is making sure that you get all of your forms together, making sure you're ready to face the tax season as it's coming forward. And
Hello.
Oh, hi, David. Good. I know you're having a little bit of technical difficulties getting on, but I was
No
sort of
worries.
giving an introduction to the great David Milinek. you actually have my brother's first name as well, but I know you're doing a lot of great work at Katz Milinek CPA tax firm, and I've been worried about this myself. But for the 2025 tax filing season, already has begun, right? We from day one of January, right, we're starting to accrue some of the issues that we're going to be facing when we file our taxes next year. But what are the steps needed to prepare for successful filing of individuals and business tax returns? I think that's really the central question. And we, even for 2024, I'm not sure what effect, the disruptions that are happening in the federal government right now in the tax structure. If we fire federal workers and their tax, from the tax structure, I have no idea of what's going on down.
Well, there's a lot of chaos going on right now.
A lot of chaos, right?
Yeah.
So what can you tell us? Yeah.
So, as far as taxes, I've heard a lot of crazy things. Like some people have said to me, like they're planning to abolish the income tax and replace it with tariffs. I don't. At the end of the day, I try not to get caught up in all that, because what you need to focus on is what actually is currently the law and how we deal with that, and that's where we can definitely help people. So as far as individuals, obviously you would have received your W-2s just recently, or 1099s, or whatever the case may be, whatever documents you have. Those obviously, if you need help with filing your tax returns, those would be things that we need. Other things that we could need would be like if you own your house and you have a mortgage, we would need a 1098. Basically the tax documents that you normally would use to file your tax return. Those are the things that we need. Now, when you're someone who has a business, it's a little bit more challenging, because in addition to your personal, you also have to get your business documentation together. So you have to, usually that'll involve bank statements and potentially credit card statements, everything like that. Because either you have to have a profit and loss already, which if you prepared, you may already have a profit and loss, which that's great. We can use that and help you out. Or if not, then we have to make that profit and loss, right? Because that's how you file your taxes. So if you're in a situation where whether you're prepared or not, we can help. Feel free to give us a call, 708-914-8220. Believe it or not, I know the year just started, but we're just about a month away from the S Corporation and Partnership deadline.
Yes. Yeah. So, what about the entrepreneur who's out there and they started, LLC, about 4 months ago, 5 months ago, 6 months ago, but they haven't made a profit, or a year ago, and they haven't made a profit for the 2024, but they have put money into the business. Is that something that should be filed, or is that?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So, if you are operating your business as a business, which most people, if you've gone to take the step to form a company, you probably are, that you are entitled to claim a loss on your tax return if your business lost money. So, that is a situation where you can actually, like, if you have a job and you're kind of doing it as like a side hustle type of thing,
right?
You can actually benefit from taking that loss, because that will reduce your taxable income, which will create potentially a refund for you. But if someone formed an LLC and took a loss last year, then that's probably the best of all worlds, because what I would probably tell them is that they would probably benefit from filing an election to be taxed as an S corporation, because as an LLC, you are taxed as a sole proprietor, or if you're a multiple member LLC, you're taxed as a partnership. Either way, you're hit with income tax like everybody else is. But in addition to that, you have to pay a 15.3% what's called self-employment tax. So that's like your FICA taxes on your wages, your Social Security and Medicare taxes.
Okay.
Except for when you're an employee, the employer pays half of the tax. As a self-employed person, you pay 100% of that. So the more profit you make, the more that's going to cost you. If you make $50,000, that self-employment tax is over $7,000. If you make if you make $75,000, you're talking about self-employment tax of $10,000. That's on top of, by the way, your income tax, which is a completely separate thing.
Yeah.
So when you file that election to be taxed as a small business corporation, you completely eliminate that self-employment tax. So you don't pay self-employment tax anymore. So, and you also, so you don't pay self-employment tax and you don't pay any corporate level tax. All you pay, well, there is a 1.5% replacement tax in the state of Illinois, and some states do charge taxes for S corporations generally, but but on the federal level, at least, you're not going to pay a corporate level tax. The only thing you pay is your income tax. So if we go back to that $50,000 example, if you file that as a single member LLC and just an individual, doesn't have any dependents or anything like that, they make $50,000, they file it on a Schedule C, they're going to pay about $12,000 of taxes on that $50,000, right? Same individual files the same thing, except for he has an S corporation, so he files an 1120S instead of a Schedule C. And then he files that $50,000 on his income tax return through a K-1 from his business. The result is that he's only going to pay about $6,000. So right there, we cut your tax bill in half just by filing one piece of paper.
Wow.
So
that's tremendous. Yeah.
If you're an entrepreneur and you find yourself in the situation where you feel like you're paying too much in taxes, definitely give us a call. We can usually help with that. 708-914-8220. 708-914-8220. And like I actually, we just recently got a business client in who they had their taxes prepared somewhere else. They had about $300,000 of income on the tax return. But I looked at their records, and it looked like their balance sheet was showing a bunch of assets that the prior year tax return wasn't. So I asked them about it, and we actually were able to uncover several assets, and this was in a prior year. So in that prior year, 100% bonus depreciation was available still. So we were able to take those assets, get 100% bonus depreciation for that, and completely wipe out that profit. We saved that client probably $60,000 to $70,000 in taxes.
Whoa!
Just for that 1 year.
Just for 1 year, man. That's like that's a whole year's income or more for some people. You know, it's like
absolutely
1 or 2 years. But that's phenomenal. And see, that's really when you go to the right place and the people who really know what they're supposed to be doing. Because I've heard, really mixed messages of, or instances where people go to one tax consultant and the person really doesn't, spend the time to figure things out for them. And it sounds like you figure things out.
Well, so that's kind of how we differentiate ourselves, I believe, anyway. Yeah. Is we are going to consider your situation holistically. We're going to consider how your businesses impact your personal tax return, how we can take and add things that are going to one example that I like to do for some of the more lucrative businesses that I work with is you've heard of larger companies having private foundations, right?
Right. Yes.
Well, you can implement that. Anyone can implement that. It doesn't. Really? You don't have to be the size of Microsoft or Home Depot to be able to start a not-for-profit. So so these larger businesses, a lot of times the people who are working in them and the people who are building them, they have these passion projects that they also want to work on, right? So what we do is we set a not-for-profit up for them, and then that the for-profit company that they have can donate to that not-for-profit company. And as an S corporation, you can donate up to 50% of your profits to the not-for-profit as a tax write-off. So the result of that is we've now allowed them to completely fund their not-for-profit that they want to do and fulfill their passion project. One client that I have that we're working on setting this up for right now, they have a training program, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where they bring people in and they train people how to do the job that they do, right? Mm-hmm. And then they hire directly out of that program. So so what we did is we set up the not-for-profit. They can now donate to the not-for-profit for a tax write-off, and really that money's not going anywhere because they still control it.
Right,
So,
right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And at the end of the day, what happens is then they get to use that to fund training these people and making sure that everything is up to par and they have all the best equipment and everything like that. So they are able to work with these people, and they can take salaries out of that not-for-profit. They can do a whole lot of things from a tax planning perspective that just helps them. Even though on paper they may technically have less money, they don't actually have less money, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
why don't you give that phone number again for people?
Yeah, it's 708-914-8220. Once again, 708-914-8220.
Yeah, this is really fantastic. And we had someone from the National Federal Savings Bank on, a vice president, in a recent show. And one of the things that he was talking about was that it actually is a veteran-owned bank, and they are, looking at mortgage loans for veterans in particular. And so people are starting to buy homes. Right now we're in this, all I can say is mortgage bubble, where people are, the interest rates are up, and we're just going everywhere, right? And homes not available, that kind of thing on the market. So people who recently purchased a home or a new piece of property, what should they be thinking about, especially if they're a veteran, because there are some veteran programs out there, where they cover, your, they have the veterans loan programs, they have all those things going on. But are there anything special for veterans if you're considering going into 2025?
Well, there are actually several programs for through the VA and other things for veteran-owned small businesses. The VA actually encourages veterans to start their own business. So there are actually several programs through the VA that you can get assistance starting a small business. And there are also, I believe, certain federal contracts that are awarded specifically to veteran-owned small businesses, and they're only awarded to veteran-owned small businesses. So if you are able to get set up, and actually we can assist people with getting set up in this way. If you are able to get set up with you make your company, and then you get registered through the SAM system and everything like that, and you can actually bid on government contracts and potentially get those government contracts. And the government wants to have veteran-owned small businesses providing several of these services. Another thing is if I know a lot of veterans are minorities, so if we're already starting a business anyway, another certification that you can get is something called a Minority Business Enterprise certification. This actually gives you access to at least, so there's federal level ones, there's state level ones, and then there's even like district level ones, like the city of Chicago has an MBE, right? So what that does is it allows those entities to, once again, get access to contracts that only those entities can bid on. So, and in the state of Illinois, 20% of the entire budget has to go to MBE contractors.
Oh, wow. So that's really a great incentive to want to move forward and have a business. And I'm sure that, tax implications for that too, that, well, someone told me one time before, and they said, so if you make $1 million a year, are you worried about paying $100,000 in taxes? So I said, well, let me try that one day.
Well, realistically, you want to make that tax bill as low as possible, because the less you're paying in taxes, the more you're actually putting in your pocket and taking home to your family, and that's the important thing.
Yeah, or reinvesting into your business, right? If you're growing.
Yeah, absolutely, and there are so many different strategies that we can use to help small businesses. One lesser known strategy that is available for families is if you have children, starting at age 3, actually. You can actually put your children on payroll in your business, and you pay them. Usually, I say about $12,000 per year. As long as you keep it under the standard deduction amount for that year, you're good. But I usually say about $12,000, and the reason for that is because that means there's no filing requirement for the child. However, by reporting wages of $12,000, you're giving them 4 quarters of credits with the Social Security Administration. You're contributing to Medicare for them, and you are also creating eligibility to contribute to a Roth IRA, which you can take that money that you're paying them, and you don't actually have to, put that money into a bank account with their name on it or anything like that. But you can actually take that money and put it into a retirement account for them. And if you start doing that at age 3, by the time they hit 18, you're going to be looking at an account with probably $250,000 in it, and at least 100,000 of that is going to be completely accessible to them as if you do it as a Roth, because you can take basis contributions out at any time. And so I think you can contribute a maximum of $7,000 to a Roth IRA. So if you want to take and invest all that money, usually what I recommend to families in those situations is to also add like a universal life policy. And the reason I say a universal life policy is because you get a life insurance policy on a kid at 3, you're going to get a huge benefit for a very little price. So if you're paying $5,000 a year toward the premium, you're going to get a very large benefit, and it's going to build cash value very quickly. And so once again, by the time they hit 18, you consistently contribute to this, they're going to have like $250,000 able to access. They could go start a business. They could use that to fund their college. They could do a lot of different things.
Wow, that's phenomenal. Phenomenal for people to know. Sadly, I think most people in the country, they pick up their, they get their paycheck deposited right into their account, and they never look at their finances until tax time. And then all of a sudden they get these papers from the company. It's like, what do I do with these? They go to someone, they throw it into a cauldron and say, what's coming out of it?
Yep.
and
a lot of times they don't even look at the finances at that point in time. So I am a really big believer, and I know this is a fairly common saying in the military: if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right?
Yes, that's right.
So if you're not at least having the equivalent of a financial checkup every year, which you go to the doctor every year, you get your checkup, you figure out how your health is, right?
That's right.
You should do the same thing with your taxes. Look at your taxes, figure out what's going on, make sure that everything's in line with what you want it to be. And if it's not, ask for ideas on how to do this.
Yeah.
If you've got the right CPA, they'll give you ideas. I have many different strategies that I can offer to clients to implement to help them achieve their goals. If they want to invest, there's several different ways to invest. You don't have to just invest in the stock market. Now you can invest in the stock market. That's an option. And if you do, I'm going to tell you to do it in a very probably risk-averse way, unless you are someone who really knows what they're doing with knowing how to read financial statements. But that's not the only option. Yeah. You could also go out. I don't know if you know this, but there are businesses everywhere available for sale. You can go out and purchase a business. And if you purchase a business that's running properly and works well, you've bought yourself cash flow.
Really? Yeah.
So, I mean, there's several different ideas. There's several different ways to do it. And we can help anyone at any stage. So if you need this help, please give us a call, 708-914-8220. Again, 708-914-8220. I also want to offer to your listeners a special discount. So the first 10 people that come to us and use the code AHG are going to get $50 off a consultation or tax preparation.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's that means we better go to the phone right away. We're running out of time, but we had got to get you back because I'm really fascinated by the things you were talking about with the scholarship fund for the child starting at 3, but also, about the businesses and how you can, buy a business that's already existing. Those kinds of things, I think the general public doesn't really even understand is existing. They think they have to do everything de novo, and make it their own, or, and that may not be the best pathway, for someone to do that.
Well, absolutely. And if you've got the resources, sometimes it's easier to buy what someone else has already started than to start something from scratch yourself, So, and there's, like I said, there's more than one solution to every scenario. So you just got to kind of sit down and look at it. And that's why I said we like to holistically evaluate each situation, because that helps us determine the best solution for that person in that situation, right?
That's right. Well, thank you, David Milinek, president of CATS Milinek Incorporated. And I wrote your number down myself. I'm hoping to get that $50 discount. By the time I get off the program, I'm probably going to be too late. But you probably have people calling in already. But thank you for your advice.
Yeah, no problem. And once again, I want to give everybody the phone number in case they need to call, 708-914-8220. That's again, 708-914-8220.
Thank you,
Use that
David.
code AHG for the $50 off consultation or tax prep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Welcome to AHG Connects, where voices, information, and resources are empowered intentionally.